Hello everybody and welcome to another fly tying session with your host Scott. In this session we're going to be tying a fly that I'm absolutely certain is unique and my own work. So this pattern is basically an amalgamation of two patterns out there from the traditional wet flies of the 19th century. This is a 21st century new pattern. So which patterns have I taken inspiration from? So there's two patterns out there. There's one I've done on the channel already called the Alexandra, which is a beautiful pattern. It was basically the 19th century version of the blob fly in the amount of controversy that it courted. Basically, people that fished with an Alexandra were treated with the same sort of disdain as somebody turning up with a spinning rod on the River Test. Which isn't going to go down well. So there we are. However, now the controversy has cooled somewhat in the last nearly 200 years. The pattern is well respected and accounts for lots of different species of salmonid now. Brown trout, rainbow trout, sea trout. I think the odd salmon's been took in the larger sizes. So the Alexandra is a well-known, well-respected fly these days. The other pattern that I've taken inspiration from is the Kingfisher Butcher, which is basically a gold version of the Butcher, but it uses blue and orange and gold in the pattern mainly, and it obviously uses the Bleached Mallard Primaries for the wing. So, and basically, the start of the pattern is basically going to be a Kingfisher Butcher. The rest of the pattern, the wing and the underwing, is going to be an Alexandra, but tied with a different colour combination. So, this pattern is going to be called the Kingfisher Alexandra, and that's what the video will be titled as. I've used an AI search for one I've tied earlier. I took a photo, did a search. Couldn't find this fly on the internet anywhere at all. The flies that it came up with was either the standard Alexandra or the gold or Kingfisher Butcher. So this is definitely a unique pattern, and if it catches lots of fish in the future and causes controversy, I'm hoping to take credit for it. Anyway, so to tie the pattern we're going to need a Kamasan B405 in size 10, that's in the vise. We have a black thread in 8/0 by Uni. For the tail, I've got some mallard that has been dyed, teal blue. I've dyed it myself. I've used the Vineyard dyes. They're in a little white pot. I'm trying to find it for you now. What have I done with it? Here we are. I've labelled them myself. That's the stuff. Half a teaspoonful, in fact a quarter of a teaspoonful of that in about a litre of water, and a tablespoon of white vinegar or distilled vinegar. Pop the feathers in and simmer, and you get yourself your dyed feathers. This was originally white, bleached white. That's what we're going to be using for the tail and the underwing. For the body, we're going to be using a gold and silver mylar in size 14 or gauge 14. That is 1/32 of an inch. Pretty good stuff. That's what I use to do all of my smaller flies. And then we're going to be using the gold side of that, and then we're going to be using a gold wire to protect it as a rib. And then for the main wing, we're going to be using Peacock sword. And for the hackle, we're going to be using a dyed hot orange cape. This one's an Indian cock cape by Stillwater. And that's pretty much it. I think that's all the materials. It is a complex fly pattern to tie. And I have said in the description of the Alexandra that was previously on the channel that people treated the people that fished with this pattern with a lot of disdain. They felt that anybody could catch fish on an Alexandra. That may be true, but not anybody can tie a decent Alexandra, and it's not an easy pattern to tie. Anyway, we're going to come in at the eye and bed the hook, and we're going to take the thread down to where the bend starts, which will be when I let go of the thread and let it dangle. It should dangle in between the point and the barb, like so. And we're going to trim away the excess. Then we're going to get a bit of a dyed mallard. You want a fairly thin slip for the tail. I find less is more with this pattern sometimes. It makes for easier tying. You get the desired shape a little bit easier. So you're going to offer it up to the hook like so. It's a bit like tying a wet fly wing. So you want to come up with it, do a pinch turn, and then pull tight, like so. And then just put a couple more to lock it in, and there's your tail. Then you're going to get your gold wire. And we're going to tie that in so that it's 2 head lengths away from the eye. You need all the materials to be about the same length on the body because we're going to be tying a tinsel body and it needs to be even. There we are, we tie it in there. A couple of turns just to lock it in. I put it in the material clip out the way. And then we're going to trim the mallard. Probably a bit more than that. I wanted 2 head lengths really, there we go. And then we're going to tidy up. Now you want the body to be as even as possible. So take your time doing this bit. The more even the foundation for the body, the better the body will look. Because you can't hide any mistakes with the tinsel. There we are. So we're going to need a fairly long length of this tinsel because we start at the eye, go down to the base of the tail and then back up again. And we're going to be we're going to be tying it in silver side up, so that when we start to turn it, the gold side will show. There we are, that's tied in. And then we're going to start winding it. Now you want to do touching turns, but not overlapping turns. Let's just go back a second, something's gone wrong on that first turn. There we are, that looks better. When you get to this point, you're going to start catching the point of the hook, so you want to hold it on top of the shank like that with your spare finger. Guide it round the point like so, and then put your next turn in. Guide it round, put the next turn in. There we go. And then when you get to the base of the tail, you want to put a full turn in. And then we're going to come the other way. And because you're going away from the point of the hook now, you don't really need to pin it down, so this is the easier part. and then tie it off. Now you can come up the body a little bit because we're going to be putting in a hackle there. There we go, it's nice and secure. There's enough tinsel there to do another one, but I've used extra. So then we're going to rib. You can go either way with this. I normally go away from myself, the opposite way to the thread. Nice even turns, and this will hold the tinsel in place. It's not going to go anywhere now. You can tie it without a wire rib if you prefer. I would use super glue underneath the tinsel to try and protect it. But if you've got a fine enough wire, you can get away with it. If you hold the thread tight, once it's tied in, you can wiggle the wire and it will eventually snap. There we go. So we're going to make some room and a nice base for the hackle to go in. That's probably about right. The head length is probably about right for 3 turns of the hackle. You need to find an appropriate sized feather, which is easier said than done with this cape. I'm not quite sure why. There's a lot of, with this particular one anyway, there's a lot of dark stuff at the base, so we want to get rid of that. You strip it off, and then you're left with that. Tie that in. To about there, leaving a good head length. Trim away. And get your hackle pliers. Now basically what I've tied here so far is a Kingfisher Butcher. Once I've finished this hackle, if you was to get a bit of mallard and put that in as the wing, it would be a Kingfisher Butcher. You want 3 turns of the hackle, 3 full turns. Drop in your first turn with your thread and then move 90 degrees away. That just stops excess fibres getting caught. You're still going to get some caught. Trim away like so. And then you want to brush them back between finger and thumb. You want to go quite a long way back because you've still got to get an underwing and a wing in there, so you need plenty of room. There we go. Now to do the underwing, it's the same material, but you need a lot thinner pieces. You just need the 2 of them. I like to do them one at a time. And you want it to come halfway down the tail, like so. I'm doing your side first so that you can see. Chucking a loose turn like you're tying a traditional wet fly wing. Hang on. That's the first one in. You want to do the same again, the other my side. Make sure that's well secure. They're the right length. Yep. Trim those. And you want to tidy up a little bit because you've got you need a nice base for the wing. So to do the main wing, you're going to need some Peacock sword. It's got a natural bend to it. I don't know whether you guys can see that. You want to try and utilise that natural bend so that it bends down the way like so. Now I'll go for between 6 and 8 strands, depending on how bushy you want to make it and how well the stuff behaves as well. So you want to offer it up so it's the same length as the whole fly. Put a loose turn in and then pull tight. Drop another one in, then just have a quick look, see how it looks. It's not looking too bad. Then put a few more in to secure it. Trim away the excess. And then tidy up and create your head. And there we have it. And we're going to whip finish. And trim away. And then varnish to finish. Now this fly needs a nice shiny head. I would probably do about 2, maybe even 3 coats of varnish with this one. And take your time with it. You don't want to ruin it at this point. If you put too much varnish on and it gets into that peacock sword, it's going to look terrible. It's quite a complex fly pattern. You don't want to ruin it at this stage. I'm just looking at the time now, and it's if I haven't edited the video at all, it's running into 20 minutes. It's definitely not one you want to chuck up a tree on your first cast. And there we are. That is what I call, and I hope it will be now known as, the Kingfisher Alexandra. Thank you all very much for watching. Please like, share and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye for now.